Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's begin with a story that takes place in a hospital, where a particular patient, known as Karen, makes quite the impression with her demanding and rude behavior. Despite being on a restricted diet, Karen would throw trays on the floor if they didn't meet her exacting standards. Fed up with her antics, our OP decides to teach her a lesson in malicious compliance. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Throw your tray? Okay to be annoyed. I work at a hospital as a room service ambassador and work on the surgical floor. One day I found out while I was off, a Karen was admitted to the hospital. She supposedly was very rude and demanded 5 entrees on her tray, 4 sides, and 3 desserts on each of her meal trays. She would throw the whole tray on the floor and would loudly complain if there was even a packet of sugar missing. One day, it made one of my fellow ambassadors cry. So when I heard of this, I had to see this for myself. She was skinny and ate everything on the tray. She was on a calorie-restricted diet, but the nurses didn't want to hear her complain, so they let her have it. Well, I saw the lady herself and was indeed skinny and not how I was expecting her to look like. Well, after testing around and forgetting an orange juice on her tray, she threw the tray on the ground in front of me. See, she was in a contact room, which meant we had to wash our hands down, up, and glove up. Not only that, but we had to ask her for her name and date of birth. Malicious compliance mode engaged. Well, I saw this as an opportunity and brought her up another tray, this time syrup missing on the tray. I gowned up and gloved up slowly in front of her so she could see me. Then I went in with my best ambassador voice and a big smile and said, "Name and date of birth, ma'am?" Which she grunted, annoyed, and said her name and date of birth. Then I said, "Do you want the tray over you or on the side?" She said, "Over me, you idiot." So I complied and did so. She saw the missing syrup and threw the tray on the ground. Then I looked and said, "Oops, forgot the syrup. I'll get you another tray." So I went and got her the same tray, of course, without the pepper on it. I went up, put the gown on slowly, turned towards her with a smile and said, "I'll be with you shortly," then gloved up. I then said, "Oops, forgot to wash my hands," proceeded to take off the gloves and gown, washed my hands, went back and put the gloves and gown on again. I could just see the fury in her eyes. Then I went into her room. "Name and date of birth, ma'am?" Then she said, "You just asked me that question. You should know by now. Just give me the damn food." Then I said, "I can't give you the tray until you give me your name and date of birth." She said, "Fine," and gave me the info. Then she saw the pepper was missing but didn't say anything. Then I said, "Do you want it over you or on the side?" She said over, and I did so. Then I said, "Have a good morning," and took off my gown, glove, and sanitized out of the room. She never complained about her trays again. I have many other stories, but this one I'm most proud about. My favorite part about this was that this patient was taught a lesson that if she inconvenienced others, the repercussion would be that she herself would be inconvenienced. And that changed the patient's behavior for the betterment of everyone. Too bad the patient didn't learn this lesson when she was a child. And our second story. Have fun running a restaurant with no recipes. So this story belongs to my father, but it's pretty fresh and I thought I would share it here as it fits perfectly. There's a pretty long explanation before, though. If any Germans read this and find mistakes, I personally don't know many details about German law, and I'm repeating what my father told me. Among a few other things, my father's a chef. It's something he went to a proper school for and worked at for the past few years. Recently, pre all this COVID stuff, he worked at a Greek restaurant in Germany as the chef with a few kitchen helpers, which basically means he cooked everything while the helpers did odd jobs like washing dishes, peeling veggies, washing meat, etc. Due to COVID, all restaurants in Germany were forced to close for an indefinite amount of time, but the government promised to pay people an aid calculated based on your monthly pay. Hence how my father found out his boss had been scamming him on his contract. Apparently in Germany, the employer side can do everything related to the contract side on their own as long as you provide them with the proper documents without you actually seeing the contract yourself. They just set everything up, you can start working, and they can provide you with the contract later to sign it, which most people do. But my father is sadly too trusting and never asked for it. Turned out he was given a part-time contract with the rest of the pay being added as a bonus under the table while still working full-time hours, plus often overtime. This resulted in his COVID aid being significantly smaller, not nearly enough to survive for a month, and due to various reasons, he didn't have much spending money. When he learned of this, he immediately decided to contact and confront his employer, and he was basically told to either suck it up or quit, and that he's very much welcome to report them. Not that it'll matter anyway. So this is what my father did. Quit and went out of his way to come to Germany and report it. And oh boy did it matter. First fallout, my father was the only person to know all the recipes for the dishes they sold. Most of them used his own secret ingredients, and people loved them. Since he started working there, the restaurant boomed in terms of popularity. He, however, never wrote those recipes down, and while the owner might have been Greek, he didn't actually know any proper recipes. He just knew how food ought to taste. Second fallout, my father did report them, and Germans take their labor laws very seriously. The restaurant was investigated, and they were given numerous fines in the tens of thousands of euros range paid to the state for this, while they were also forced to pay my father all his due pay, because legally he worked full-time hours, proven by cameras and testimony of people in the area, as the owner tried to lie about his work hours, and officially was only paid part-time. This put the restaurant deep into the red, with a very high chance of having a close up and sell their place to pay everything off. And initially, all my father wanted was for his employer to just cover the part of the government aid that he lost because of his contract. Such tasty revenge. Seriously, though, good for your dad. Kitchen work is high stress, high pressure, and good workers are not a dime a dozen the way a lot of employers seem to believe. And our next story. Dude, I'm a civilian. I'm not a member of the military, but I have a number of close friends that are. A few years ago, my cousin joined the Air Force, and before shipping out to basic training, he had to swear in at the local MEPS, Military Entrance Processing Station building, and do his physical, etc. I wanted to watch him swear in since it was the last time I'd see my cousin for about a year, so I took a few hours off work in the morning and drove out to see the ceremony. Anyways, the ceremony was cool. I hung out with his family for a bit while we said our goodbyes, but eventually had to leave to go to work. As I'm walking out, the military guy at the front desk yells at me, "Hey, who said you could leave?" Startled, I turned around and pointed to myself with a questioning look. The front desk guy moves around the desk and yells, "Yeah, you. Who the hell else would I be talking to?" I look around and there's lots of people leaving and entering, so I just walk up to him and say, "Sorry, I thought I could just leave. I didn't know the rules." And he cuts me off and says, "Yeah, you need to check out like everyone else. Just wait right here." And he leaves. He comes out with someone a bit older than him and with a different uniform, I assume an officer, and says to him, "Yeah, this one wants to leave." The officer looks at me and says, "Where's your ID?" I reach for my wallet and give him my driver's license. At this point, I'm starting to get annoyed because I need to leave for work or I'll be late. The office looks at my driver's license and starts to say, "No, I need your..." "Wait a minute, are you a recruit?" "No, dude, I'm a civilian," I say, reaching for my ID, annoyed at the fact that this whole thing was a misunderstanding that shouldn't have been more than a few seconds of conversation. He says, "Oh yeah, you're free to go whenever." I tell him thanks and hurry out to go to work. I ended up being late for my actual job, which wasn't a big deal, just annoying, and I had my work clothes on, black polo with slacks and dress shoes without a logo or anything. But still, come on, man, I'm obviously not a recruit. I still to this day don't know if the front desk guy was just bored and screwing with me, or he legitimately was dumb enough to think I was a recruit and wanted to flex his power and authority over someone. After hearing some military stories from my cousin and friends, I'm leaning towards the latter. Sounds to me like they could have avoided the entire issue if they just gave visitors a badge that said visitor. And our next story. Boss gets me fired, so I also get her fired. A little over a year ago, I was working at a company and my manager and I didn't see eye to eye at all. I work in IT and have been working with EUC, End User Computing, for over 20 years. My manager was new to EUC and didn't like the fact that I would correct her, and most of the company came to me with questions and bypassed her. After about 6 months, I started to notice things were going downhill fast. I went to her boss and raised my concerns to no avail. Toward the end, I had to travel, and she wouldn't approve my expense report when I got back. We were not on speaking terms, so I emailed her several times. After a week and a half, I filed a complaint with HR and started looking for a new job. The day I met with HR, they went to her manager, and within an hour, my expense report was approved, and she made up an excuse saying the system was down, so that's why she didn't approve it. On a side note, when I met with HR, I told them that I felt she was retaliating against me, and I felt she was going to try to get me fired. About a week later, I get an IM from her manager asking me to come talk about an issue with a contract. The odd thing was, he asked me to meet him in an office by HR. I get there, and HR is in there. They ask me all kinds of questions, and after a while, tell me they have to suspend me due to lies my manager had told them. I was being nice and not bad-mouthing my manager up to this point. Then the gloves came off. I told them the truth about everything, which was easily verified if they interviewed my teammates. HR and the VP talked among themselves and decided both of us would be suspended pending investigations. When I handed him my phone and access card, I told the HR person, "This was why I came to you, as I knew she was going to try this." The next day, I get a call saying I was terminated, but she was also. I said I'd been interviewing and had a job lined up. I started 3 days later. 1.5 years later, my former manager, still unemployed. And our last story. The HOA is trying to stop us from building a house. When my father hit it really big working in New York City, he wanted to move out of his apartment to a house in the suburbs. He found a suburb he liked, a quaintish upper-middle-class commuter town, and designed his dream house from the ground up. Bought a piece of land, got all the permits, and started building the largest house in town, a shiny new brick mansion in a town where most houses dated back at least 100 years and some 300-plus years. The HOA didn't like it one bit. They tried everything to get us to stop building. This was years ago, and I don't know how it happened, got the first person we bought land from to unsell us the land, renege on the contract, and refund us the money days before construction was about to start. They did everything in their power to do the same again on the second piece of land we bought. Mid-build, they pulled some crap at the permits and had one of them revoked, hoping to have us stop building, but only resulting in my father having to build a much flatter roof, make the attic into unlivable space. Then they went too far. Someone in the HOA called in a connection and had an entire article written in the New York Times about how my family was ruining the town's historical roots and taking away its character, and how rich New Yorkers were ruining the tri-state area's culture and historical roots, etc., etc. And FDR, while the house was much bigger and grander on the inside and new-looking on the outside, the street exposure was minimized, and it was not that far out of place. The HOA was just far too anal, and it probably didn't help that we were a Jewish family with a very Jewish last name in a small town of very conservative Christians. We built the house and paved the way for more like it. Within 5 years, 2 more mansions sprouted up in town, relatively unopposed by the HOA, after they discovered there was no stopping the builds. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.